Sendam Beje Jibra Chazalo Chuga Namje Yela Jojo Sonje Gejan Chuga Tamje Do Simje Wamba Rimba Jishi Pame Songe Vela Chazalo Masan Jebe Yule Rabbe Jam Bebe Genge Jobe Yandazi Songe Sawa Samje Meja Lebe Lamjo Dela Chazalo Rashi Vasa Kata Meme Namba Kunde Yeshe Rabba Yeshe Jachinye Jembe Jembo Pame Doje Vela Chazalo Chuga Mawa Nije Nije Manga Nawa Rabdo Jawa Ganchu Yesiva Namda Shiva Dishe Kundo Sila Chazalo Kashe Jove Yeshe Nisu Kuso Doda Yeshe Pame Do Tuje Chile Bado Mepo Veba Mela Tabra Chazalo Nida Yeke Jube Lelo Yoso Maso Namge Tardo Barbo Yelande Devra Shetan Mela Zerwa Dage Dedashe Dada Simje Kunje Debe Devra Jeva Tuje Shabraje Beje Namyan Jebra Majroje Beje Jeba Tendo Seje Shangata Yase Nyede Ramya Roa Kunje Gela Jera Kaya Chuju Deshe Tamje Tejo Chuje Kolo Kurwa Kapa Jasa Pado Nebraya Nyange Meda Shimra Sowa Dezo Sabe Gewa Jeba Shimbe Genje Chanjo Shimra Mo Jise Chanjo Nimba Mato Jewa Dima Mawa Tamshe Do Lama Tambe Jiso Zenju Chanjo Semne Namda Nyama Jo Riso Longje Puso Soba Tajo Chodo Chude Choda Sanje Tela Rinche Loba Deda Zedre Paye Dejro Jenge Sa Sumso Mise Korwaye Mekon Jike Namso Kejro Kante Siti Nila Rami Lenda Shinda Nyala Majroje Jinta Sujin Sena Zundreda Samde Shera Tage Mejona Melanda Da Yishe Nyazo Sheba Tamje Yonso Zogurje Beda Deshe Sala Temeva Simle Roshe Vemba Ranjeta Meda Nyamra Tobe Chuje Sede Tato Shishe Dejroje Parve Deshe Nyinga Nyangede Kundo Deshe Nyinga Yishe De Chita Dume Daniele De Shenye Tobe Raje Dejroje Kaya Dejo Samo Seneva Yede Tato Jojo Chuje Koto So Yede Yishe Chilezo Deshe Shela Tome Jojoje Kando Jola Nyambara Gajroje Yule Sheba Nambara Dabada Yanye Mange Shiso Jesu Yase Namge Sheta Sombra Joji Se Dede Yode Madoma Mide Jole Nambara Jawaye Chime Seta Bajra Kebada Sambe Dege Yishe Jojoje Sede Nawa Nambara Yewana Deshe Seta Jebe Chilane Rasa Neje Jebe Dendane Pada Lama Bado Mebaye Naso Jebe Dage Usoje Rana Jeme Chuje Yirashe Namda Deva Chige Shina Deshe Semje Dela Jojoje Shindre Masu Vije Bumbu Rama Reche Beme Sevu Jola Gela Chewa Bumda Tamchebe Chuje Weba Meba Tongjoje Gyase Soge Yongro Jamde Tenzam Charge Nije Tamarwa Yabara Tave Memon Detone Chanjo Shembo Londe Tongjoje Gezo Leje Nambara Tave Moza Yoza Pada Debele Pame Jone Jamde Dedela Teya Gezo Shiba Jujoje Jamje Jambe Yanda Kundosa Jere Sewa Tuje Toblasa Geze Namda Tato Medoje Namdra Sula Nyamra Jujoje Namda Gezo Jama Tajobe Teja Gezo Tana Kusone Yeshe Gezo Toba Rabdone Sibe Sole Dobe Jojoje Shinga Gezo Tato Jomwada Sonye Gezo Tane Beroje Simje Gezo Rabdo Mijede Mala Gezo Namne Jojoje Chitra Kunje Dewa Shinamje Tuje Mala Zedo Chitra Tetra Dage Simje Male Nyurdo Sanje Sala Gemara
We will begin with the opening prayers.
송이 여주 예요다 명수기 고 선배변 버서게를 원고 공개를 유류발라 니스는 뭐 유죠 어제 누스버서 나랑에 야외도 유르샤게도 저기에 뭐지를 주 좀서 방가래 저래서 버서 게베레 저래서 버서 왜 마음에 제베 절라서 시작하라 캐는 이유 제베 돈드제는 뭐 야외에 먹으면서 저거 유름 버서라 자서 오늘도 저를 조라마가마 봐 이용으로 인존에서 시베를 이단에 좀마 틀려고 이제 제가 언제 주정빈이 저를 내주지 그변들 다음에 도지 경워라즈 시제주는 남자 도매기에서 건드리는 닝바테 주주라는 거가 미규도지 샤블라상즈로 보내자라마를 보제 다게 주를 배매되죠 거린 신병원에 제송대 구송도 이행으로 자도 namlengi 상세낭도
You can all hear me, right?
다딘데 공원들이야 namlengi 상로야 공감 사회기 엔 섬주샤이
First of all, I would like to offer you all my greetings.
다딘데 파마데지 메기 지주에기
Today is the third day of the Audio Chema Spring Teachings, and so today I would like to continue teaching from the autobiographical verses Good Deeds by the 8th Karmapa MIKYÖ DORJE, continuing where we left off from yesterday, the 10th Good Day, the 10th Good Deed, and then I will teach about the 11th Good Deed. Now, yesterday when I was speaking about the 10th Good Deed, I primarily spoke mainly about the practice of exchanging oneself for others. Now, when we talk about exchanging oneself for others, many people of us might think that this is not necessary for anyone other than practitioners of the Mahayana, or we might think that it is a practice that does not have much of a connection with our daily life. It's possible that we might see it that way. But when we look at what is actually going on in our human life, or if we look at what our life is like, we have our parents, we have our life partners, we have children, We have people who are really dear to our hearts, people who we care about, people who we love. So there are people like this. And for their sake, if we had to sacrifice ourselves for their sake, we would be able to. And when they encounter difficulties and problems, we often are able to think, it would be better for me than them. And if I could take their hardships and difficulties on myself, then wouldn't that be wonderful? And so we think we are heartsick for them, and we would do whatever we can for them. Now, actually, when we look at it, that exactly is itself exchanging yourself for others. However, when you think about the scope of the intentions, the aims, and the purposes, the ultimate purposes, then the exchanging oneself for others taught in the Lojong practice and the ordinary exchanging ourselves for others that we normally do are just a little bit different. We don't need to speak about it too much. We can actually, there are all of us who are here. If we think about those of us who are gathered here, for right now, in this world, like think about, is there someone in this world who is the dearest person for you, and you're the person who's dearest to your heart? I think it's probably likely that there's someone who's really the most dear to your heart. And if that person who you really cared for one day got into a big difficulty and had a lot of suffering, something really bad happened to them, at that point, you'd also empathize. You'd also feel suffering. You would also suffer. You'd also be unhappy and about the suffer. Not only that, it's possible that we'd have the affection and compassion of being unable to bear seeing the other person suffer and think, what could I do if only I could feel the suffering in place of them? We think that we'd be happy if we could take their place. It's possible that you might think that way. And that feeling is something that we've all felt. It's not something that never happened before. I think that for almost all of us, we have felt this, Zabard. Even if you haven't yet felt it, it's possible that you will. And so this intention or the wish to exchange yourself for others is not something that's incredibly distant from ourselves. Nor is it something that is just completely beyond our conception that we can't even begin to understand. It is something that all of us human beings can naturally feel. So then, so that wish to exchange ourselves for our dear friend, the person whom we really love, is not so difficult. It just naturally happens. But the wish to exchange ourselves and others that we train in mind training practice doesn't come right away. And so what is the difference between the two? So what's the difference in this kind of situation between the two of them? And again, here it's the intention, the aim, the ultimate purpose, and so forth. That's what the differences come from. And so then when we're thinking about our dear friends, the person we love most, The reason why we feel like we want to exchange the need for us to feel like we can exchange ourselves for this person is that we want them to be happy. We want them to be comfortable. We always have that wish. Because we have that wish, whatever we need to do to make them happy and to make them comfortable, we think we'll do it. We feel like we would dare to do it, that we can do it. But when we speak in terms of the mind training or lojong practice, what it is that it's that we have to hold the hope that we can bring all sentient beings to happiness, not just one or two, not just the people we love, not just a couple of people we care for. It's for all sentient beings, thinking that may they be happy, may they be comfortable. That's the hope we need to hold. And in order to fulfill that hope or that purpose, what we need to do is we need to take the loving thoughts for our dear friends and their ability to or wish to exchange ourselves to us, and we need to take that and see whether we can feel the same feeling for all sentient beings. Basically, we need to increase that feeling. We need to enlarge it and improve it so that we can have those loving wishes for all sentient beings and see if we can have that wish to exchange ourselves for all the sentients. And this is the first step, but it's not easy at all. And we all understand that it's not easy. Likewise, when we look at what the crux of the matter, whether we're able to train ourselves, minds, and exchanging ourselves for others comes down to, is it comes to this. It comes to, are we able to have the same affection for all sentient beings as we do for those who are close to us? So how is it that we can accomplish this purpose of developing the same feelings of affection and love for all sentient beings as we feel for those close to us? And this is a really huge question. It's a huge question in particular. And this is for the people we don't normally have much of a connection, people we don't even really know, we don't recognize. How can we feel love for them? It's not very easy, right? Oh, it's even worse than that. Are the people you don't like. Are the people for whom you feel hatred or have grudges. You can call them your enemies, or the people who don't, your adversaries. The people who, when you see them, if you see people like that, and I think, I'm willing to feel suffering, experience suffering for them, it's difficult to feel like that. So it's easy for us to have loving thoughts for those close to us, but for the people we don't know, it's really difficult to have loving thoughts for the people we don't know. And it's even harder for our enemies. It's difficult to feel, even for an instant, the wish to experience suffering and exchange ourselves for our enemies. And so why is that? Of course, there are many different reasons for this. There are many reasons that we can say about this, but the main one is the way we normally think. The way we all normally think is that we think that they're not really connected to us. Is that so the people who are not connected is the people so we think, well, they're not my relative, they're not my friend. I don't have any connection to them. Why would I go on? Give myself problems to work for them. Why would I do this? We don't feel a connection? So why would we do all that for them? And if the other person is your enemy, then it's even more difficult than that. So why would I feel love for them? So we often would think in this way. Likewise, not only that, We sort of think in the back of our minds, like if it's like of our mother, we think, yeah, we can recognize them. Our mothers are more important than us. You think you can feel like, oh, my mother's more important than me. And if you have children, then you might think, oh, my children, they're more important than me. I consider them more important than me. But when there's sentient beings you don't know, if you think like horses or donkeys, or if you think about your enemies, why would I consider them as being more important than me? Why would I sacrifice myself for their sake? I would think that they're not more important. There's nothing about them that's more important than me. So whether we can develop the courage to be able to sacrifice ourselves for the sake of any sentient beings, it begins, first of all, depends upon whether we can understand the reasons and why we must cherish all sentient beings, and whether we're able to consider the reasons why the other person is so important. That's what it comes down to. And so because of this, Geshe Langdrigpa says, as like the very first stage of his 8 verses of mind training, that we must train in cherishing all sentient beings as being more important than a wish-fulfilling jewel. And the meaning of this is, so to become, not only is it that all sentient beings are more important in comparison to ourselves, but we have to see them as like a source of being more important, or a basis for being more important. So we say that all sentient beings are important. It's easy to say that, but we need to think about the reasons. And there are many reasons why they're more important, but the main reason why sentient beings are more important than us is that without serving sentient beings, there's no way that we can gather the accumulations. There's no way for us to purify obscurations. There's no way to reach Buddhahood without them. For example, if we want to go to the upper floors of a building, we have to go up the stairs. We can't go up each of the stairs. If there are no stairs, then how can you go up the stairs? Likewise, for us, sentient beings are like the source for us to gather the 2 accumulations. And so because they're the source for gathering the 2 accumulations, they're extremely important. They're extremely sacred. So now there are many methods to gather the accumulations in relation to sentient beings. And so what is the reason why we're saying that exchanging ourselves for others is so important? What's the reason for that? Well, there are reasons. Now, if we take an example of this, or an analogy of this, normally when we, in order to support ourselves, we earn money. It's the same, actually. In this world, many people will work very, very hard in order to earn money. And the reason why I want to earn and save money is because in order to live our lives, we need food and drink. And in order to have food and drink, we need money. If we don't have any money, then we can't do anything. There's no way to do anything. And so for that reason, we all try to earn money. And everyone kind of likes money to some degree. There's like no choice but to like them. Without money, you can't do anything, right? Similarly, like, isn't that an analogy? If we want to live a good Dharma life, so what I speak about for is a good worldly life. Now, if we want to talk about a good Dharma life, then we need to have all of the good circumstances for it. If we have the excellent circumstances for it, then there's no way that we can lead a good Dharmic life. And for the good conditions to Dharma to come together, we must gather the accumulations of merit. And the reason for this is that if we want to gain a human life, meet a good guru, none of that's going to happen unless you have the support of gathering the 2 accumulations. And so therefore, gathering the accumulations is the same as saving money. So normally, how is it that we usually earn money? We don't need to explain that much. Everyone sees it. You work hard, you do business, you work and do various things to earn money and to save money. And in actuality, all that money is like basically all the nature of trade and business. You're giving someone else to someone else, and because of that, then you get something back. It's basically trade and business in essence. Likewise, money is like the main capital or the main foundation or circumstance for leading a good life. Likewise, when you're practicing, the main capital, the main basis is the two accumulations of merit and wisdom. So how do we gather the accumulations? The way that we gather the accumulations is the same as when we earn money. We need to do trade and business in order to, for the sake of all sentience, we need to have the exchange of trade and business and the best way, the best method for doing this is to practice exchanging oneself for others. So how is that you do the trade or the business of exchanging oneself for others? And it's similar to what we normally do. We take others' suffering, we kind of buy others' suffering, and then we're selling our happiness to others. That's why we think about it. And then that's how we gather the accumulations. And so in this way, it's like a business or it's like a trade. If we think about it in this way, then earning money and gathering the accumulations are the same. Now, what's the difference then? Money is based on external things. Gathering the accumulations is based on your internal mind. Now, another direction is that there's earning money is for the sake of this life, because after this lifetime, it doesn't help at all. Gathering the accumulations is for all of our lifetimes, from this lifetime and all the future lifetimes. That's the big difference. Now, another difference is that normally when we work and earn money, sometimes we don't get all of the salary or wages that we deserve, or maybe your office or company. Sometimes it happens that the boss in the company doesn't give you all the paychecks that you deserve. Or sometimes things don't go as they should, and you lose your capital. And even if you have a lot of money, sometimes if the money decreases in value, then you also have a big a loss. Likewise, these days in this world, there's a lot of economic decline in the world. And when there's an economic decline in the world, then it's also a loss to you personally. However, so when you think about the trade of our internal mind, the business of the internal mind, or the gathering, the merit, the accumulations from the explanations, when you do that trade, then you get everything that you're supposed to get. It's not like you only get half of it or only part of it. And likewise, also the value of your merit and accumulations ever decreasing or ever just completely going bankrupt, because cause and effect is unfailing. And so therefore, gathering the accumulations is much more stable and better than earning money. And in addition to that, also external money has a limit. For example, if one person has a lot of money, then that means that they have to decrease the amount of other people. When the rich people in the world earn more money, how do they get it? Well, it primarily comes from the poor people. So in order for people becoming rich, what that means is that many other people are going to have less money. But when we gather the accumulations, there's no worry about that at all. Not only in this world, in all of the realms through all the many universes, there's no way that there would be any limit to the two exercises. There's no sense of saying, okay, now I have enough. Now I don't need to accumulate any more merit. There's no need to worry about that. You need to gather as many accumulations, as much as you can, as hard as you can. And again, this way, when we gather the accumulations, like if you have the American dollar, if you think about it, is like the common universal currency that you can use in many different countries. It's accepted everywhere. You can use it everywhere. It's the currency that's used everywhere. Similar, the two accumulations are the currency that you can use in this lifetime and the future lives, and that you can use in any universe, in any world realm. And so for this reason, so the reason why aren't we earning this money that we need for this in future lives? Well, so that's one thing that we need to think about, is that right now is we want to enjoy ourselves now. And what we use now, so what we enjoy now, we use now, comes because of the results of our merit from previous lifetimes. And so we're always spending that, actually. We're always spending money. It's like we're always, spending expenses out of our true accumulations. And are we continuing to gather true accumulations? We're not, if we speak about it frankly. And so if you're not gathering accumulations, you're always expending it, then one day it's going to just the same as when money, you run out of money, you can also run out of merit. And so for that reason, right now, when we have a little bit of accumulations of merit, we need to do what we can to grow that exponentially. Because after you've gone bankrupt, if you want to come back up, it's really hard. And so from the very beginning, you need to invest in it. It's like, like international business, make investments. They invest capital, and therefore then their money grows exponentially. In the same way, we need to do whatever we can to gather as many accumulations as we can. Now, when I talk about investments, then everyone starts going happy about it. Everyone thinks about it. The reason is because when we talk about investments, what they think is, I'm going to get rich soon. I've got to get a lot of money and become rich. Everyone thinks this. And so I think I have this idea, right? And I think if I get a few $1 million, I think, oh, that's pretty good. We think that's good. So many people who think that. And so people work really hard, and they just continually think and do whatever they can to earn a lot of money now. But no matter how much difficulties we go through this in this lifetime, we can maybe get just a little bit more rich than the people around us. But if we compare ourselves to the richest person in the world, then this is like millions of times difference between us. There's no way you can compare yourself to him. Actually, the best way to become rich, the best method for becoming rich is to take a good birth, is to take birth in a rich family. If you want to become the future Elon Musk, if you can do that, then you're going to be rich. And so these days, as a way of speaking with people, saying a good or bad birth is actually, it comes down to a technical matter of birth. So there's ways to make a good birth in your next life. And that one method is to gather the accumulations. If you gather the accumulations, if you have that support, then whatever you want, we'll be able to do. There's nothing that you can't do in this world, or no thing that you can't get in this world by accumulating the merit. But actually, and so many people are thinking about gathering accumulations to have more money, right? And they think that if I have great merit, then they're going to be able to. So we're gathering accumulations in order to gain money, but this isn't the right way of thinking about it. It's because in order to accumulate, we can get many things that are far better than money. If we're only thinking about money, then this is kind of like an insignificant way of thinking about it. In this world, many of the things there are in this world can't be bought for money. And even in the end, whether you have money depends on whether you have merit. We think about as human beings, we think money is really important, right? But if you think about the vaster terms of the whole universe and all the different world realms, think about the situation, the difference, then the money has no value at all. But the power of gathering the accumulations fulfills the entire realm of space and the Dharma Dhatu. And so for that, there brings immeasurable benefits and happiness. And it can eliminate all of the obstacles and difficulties that we have. So there's no better source than better way to do this than that. And so for that reason, why aren't we gathering the accumulations? But right now, the reason why we need to gather accumulations, the benefit for usage, and the benefit of gathering the accumulations are something we don't really know exactly. But just because we can't understand why it's so important doesn't mean that we should disregard it. Because if we think of it as unimportant, then there's a danger that we'll lose everything that we have. And so for that reason, the main point here is that even if we are not able to actually exchange ourselves for others, we can do it by visualism or see in our minds. Are we able to exchange ourselves for others? With our minds, even just thinking about exchanging ourselves for others gathers a great amount of accumulations. We're thinking about it. It's like I'm just saying. It's not just thinking about it in a casual. It's thinking about it from the depths of the mind, and with a pure motivation. Otherwise, it's not as much benefit. Likewise, when you think about the aim of gathering the accumulations, it doesn't matter who the sentient beings are. They can be rich or poor, human or animal, whatever. It is because of all sentient beings that there are that we can gather the accumulations. And for that reason, we consider sentient beings that people can see, or the people that are beings whose names you can hear, no matter what sentient beings, in any of the 6 realms of samsara. When we see them or hear about them, and we think, oh, they're my donors. They're the donors or the sponsors who help me gather the accumulations. They're the source of my accumulation of merit. They're like my bank. So that's how we need to think of them. And for every individual sentient being, we need to see if we are able to gather the accumulations in relation to them and take the opportunities that we have. This is incredibly important. So that's how it is. So that's the topic of exchanging self for others. So I think that perhaps it's better to take the 30-minute break here. And then I will continue speaking about the 11th good deed.
MIKYÖ barwa samje chen la wo chen la urwa samje te monda choge moja narwa marwa na namsa la wo me ba chada kane ni ne sawa de me de je na je tong la tong she na do ye me ko la sawa de la me ko ye jin je lo ta je tong la tong she ra do ye me la me song la sawa de la me song ye jin je lo de je tong la tong she de do ye me to la sawa de la me to ye jin je lo che ko ro re na che be se nam ga cha dong we je gong che be kwa nya je se je che la me mo ro nyam da do ba sha ra che la ma che bo che ye je so da ro je chen je la je she so de jo de ra chen bo la du je na la wa she cho da de ma mo da za be de je na ba je so da ye ma le she wa ra ye she kan ro jang go ka la sha ne de je me so na we je so de je ne ma je do je ba na je ma ba de do to la sha ye she kan ro se mo ka la sha ne de je me so na we je so de je ne ma je do je ba na je ma ba de do to la sha ye she kan ro ma mo ka la sha ne de je me so na we je so de je ne ma je do je ba na je ma ba de do to la sha ye she kan ro karma ka la sha ne de je me so na we je so de je ne ma je do je ba na je ma ba de do to la sha ye she kan ro na mo ka la sha ne de je me so na we je so de je ne ma je do je ba na je ma ba de do to la sha ye she kan ro na mo ka la sha ne de je me so na we je so de je ne ma je do je ba na je ma ba de do to la sha ye she kan ro cha mo ka la sha ne de je me so na we je so de je ne ma je do je ba na je ma ba de do to la sha nam ga ga we mi je do je a we se je be do je ka wa ho nya ba we yang jin ne ba hong je ma se je le da lo ong je se da ba ko je wa je je se ye she ye ro ba sha wa cha da ye wa ka ma ba chen bo san je che lam je ja so je no ye de ye mo ma ye ba ko se san je je ne bo la ma na wa to je wang bo chu de tu ko je se no je yang je je nam sha de ye de me re sa ko she ta ye ta bo ka je ka de ye sim je chen je la ba chen da da ta we je ba ki Kama je chupa rangara shi de chue chi me je rang so so chi le je ma da te sum chi ma se wa shem gu ta nye chen no ni me de de na so su je sim je de ze je we wang bo re sa de sa da che ba yin me mo to je chung ko tam ba che no che jo wa tam che chi de de ne ka de me bra se be de che ya wa she ba karma pa ye kam sa ti me nya ba da che wa che no che che le she la ra wa tham ne ye she de sam je che la po wa tu je che de to je yang che pa de karma pa shin bo che no to je chang je yin de ye de he ro ka pa ne ye la de de je we wang bo san je de be ko je nyang wa mi je to je ke ya wa che de karma pa che no san je che de karma pa che no de she che de karma pa che no tham je che pa karma pa che no 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 karma 是罗不知知得知罗三界知得知罗不得知知知罗密切多知罗所望知所去照见所罗所望知所他不可知罗所望知所干嘛干桑罗所望知所知知知让他不是知知知知让他不是知干嘛知让他不是知如果知让他不是知好知他知前方三界涅槃诸根愿望密切多知所望爱也密切那所也的多知知见密切那所也是所望知所心界知多心界他知不所你面对着那巴里的经受的知别落的欲望面别下家前别望着做一切是拉出拉面那苏拉也常别他拉米叫那苏拉中不见他也没想那苏也想都着去也没都那苏也另一那些拉米人那苏拉嘞特的进去他米叫那苏拉中大给点点这话不见这马特总在那是别的那落的领着特别谁说等跟说那边上街有点小了明天别家说看样心结他结结花结土结都把面别一对着了没光那苏光自月他他没着那能着不着顶上没着那能着土也记着说他妈出着的把些他还家没觉着他他点着都自己那么当把他没心结了谁当说话的不了就当没谁东亲家桑拉当那年年经安节对所谁些拉玛人不知人节去把钱去浪节破瓦也都被定谁些不是接当天发所着个把自别他点所话三节老张所的把他们那外就的他把让真的把跑把起点往上你光日别的年纪多所话的所突厥三八十我这这三个节个句子把没把没觉得我的那边起来真大这话所别三节他把不送给撒旦节把他们心结的多他的你都在我前边谢谢新年这话都觉大家特别浪漫其实天让他不一年新年来是我的老妈他把那所玩的所其实连不同来情节老师其实怎么情节老师都也几个就来情节结完的结完自然的自然他们觉得不的老妈他把这边结完他们就来情节老师没这边结完他把他们觉得没就来情节老师结完的结完自然的自然他们觉得不的老妈来情节去情节告诉我他能往的老头多连没来情节老师多给节目送到去姐姐这大去不来情节老师你老是把东北人也不来情节来是也不来去玩一年这把他每天他妈知道这玩的新老他说情别给没觉我别这嘛就这些这我工作把点干嘛吧没觉都这老妈的这年三妈都这得把了没给这做了这送这工作说这我工作用这当把就上哪这边怎么可能当一当年把把点的话可乐都别这做这这这老这年把没给这这这现在我把点了没个送这都这上一个把那这的嘛就多上一些，我的那心结他们姐姐，就知道是心结他们姐姐，给说别把的知道我把的上给你把也菜，这当时了不多没人说。娘们当不可觉了，所谓的所没觉得上前把了，所谓的所直觉干嘛看上了，所谓的所不觉觉让就不觉了，所谓的所你把见上见你把了，所谓的所去了见他也要见了，所谓的所其实都见要见了，所谓的所从面都见搞完了，所谓的所当面要见上波了，所谓的所正面没见上波了，所谓的所。学了从面了，所谓的说，突厥从面了，所谓的说，你把从面了，所谓的说，去我一年收了情节老师，去把今年都不来情节，即将见面都不来情节老师，每到年节就来情节老师，年年别别突厥见了， so on this Cholon bebe chile chela so on this Machi bebe chela chela so on this Tonde de jeba chela so on this Jawa chota jazola so on this Kunje meje do jela so on this Jawa kunjo yela la so on this Jize wanjo do jela so on this Karwa chuje wanjo la so on this Jaja chuye do jela so on this Pade yishe nimba la so on this Sume yishe do jela so on this Paje chuje do la so on this Jawa chanchu do jela so on this Siddha chuje june la so on this Jize do jela so on this Beban chuje jazo la so on this Bema nije wambo la so on this Jawa tejo do jela so on this Jize lo je taye la so on this Kunsa kaja do jela so on this Bema wancho nyamba la so on this Pade chenze use la so on this Ranjung ribe do jela so on this Chinchen tsawe lama la so on this Shingan tribe chamba la so on this Ramjan shinge daba la so on this Samje rewa le deba la so on this She chawa dine treba Toja moye so der so chaba Tana tuje jine so chibe Nanam do linje kashan Nisonge jigo duma june Tara namcho dewa chinje Shingan na jize doje yanje dine Papa jere se wanjo shinda Seje cha rimbro jane Geje laba kyangum samla Jemba shaje sheba ino Meje be o jemba jimbe Chuje tobo jela so adeso Meje be o jemba jimbe Chuje tobo jela so adeso Meje be o jemba jimbe Chuje tobo jela so adeso Chuje jewa dane tongje do Risa lo sa ma yame bada Nije chuje lama la Pade lame namze la nesho Pade lame nambra tarwala Geje samya loka mi geje Chize lepra tongwe mi gege Lame jina semba jubra sho Jewa kundo yanda lama da Chame chuje pala long chuje Sada lamye yunze Dorje change goba nyo do sho Nejizo pede dede na semba rangjung doje la Kajwe lame soje go Dami de dongwe so Nase chinje la dose Vimi jo doje dende na Chumde tuje chimbo la Jawa jaso soje ga Dami de dongwe so ade Nase chinje la dose Yeme kon barwe longye na Choy jabo tacho la Pawe jaso soje ga Dami de dongwe so ade Nase chinje la dose Yonka je tabe shaye na Yun sawa ishe ta Gila kandre jaso soje ga Dami de dongwe so ade Nase chinje la dose Tenta bala ishe ye na Lobe bema chunne la Chukdo jaso soje ga Dami de dongwe so ade Nase chinje la dose Odam se chimbo shaye na Chujo magwe chamdra la Tamje jaso soje ga Dami de dongwe so ade Nase chinje la dose Tsawa chibra jina la Teje gebe soda be Dada jojo simje na Namba kunje toba shu Semba ranjung doje ne Ishe nombo nyeba da Dashe yonje uwa se Bade jomwe dashe jo Changjo simje chile Tuje wese chojo jo Jomwa dawa nyanye da Zamlin dewe dashe jo Zale ne waranze lo zo Simje namje namra lama la jabzo chiwa sanje la jabzo chiwa che la jabzo chiwa gide la jabzo chiwa chamde de je je ma rajum ba yanda bra zobe sanje sha ja to ba la cha za lo do je ni mo ra do jamba la cha za rinje ve tra la cha za lo no wa ge ja mo la cha za lo ba de la cha za lo ba je la cha za lo rinje me la cha za lo rinje do ve la cha za lo thong wa de la cha za lo rinje da wa la cha za lo ji ma me ba la cha za Peje la cha za lo samba la cha za lo sambe ji la cha za lo chula la cha za lo chule la cha za lo Simje Sonje Dikbele Nyebra Juga Toje Shabra Leje Namyo Jeba Mojoje Leje Jeba Nendo Seje Sho Shaza Wada Chuje Shabwa Jizo Yera Moje Sawa Gewa Chunse Dage Jizo Damje Dage Janjo Jebo Sem la che paraiso, le che
老师，那么那个声那个
Now, can you all hear me? Next, I would like to speak about the 11th good deed. And so I thought I would first introduce it to you by way of talking about the outline. Now, the outline is that as the meditation on relative bodhicitta. There are two parts to that: exchanging himself for others in meditation and taking adversity as the path in the meditation. So these are the practices of meditation and the post-meditation. So today where we've come to is the second, taking adversity in post-meditation. Now, taking adversity as a path in Postman division has terms of the number of subdivisions or the subtopics. And there are 10 subtopics. And what these 10 are is the first is taking running out of supplies as the path. The second is taking harm as the path. The third is taking speech as the path. The fourth is taking pleasant words as the path. The fifth is taking suffering as the path. The sixth is taking the benefit and happiness of good intentions as the path. The seventh is taking acting upon good intentions as the path. The eighth is taking things going well or badly as the path. The ninth is taking hospitality as the path. And the 10th is taking greed as the path. So today, the one we were speaking about is taking running out of supplies as the path. And now this stanza for this reads, although I gave without attachment to beings, when combative people responded to that with harm, I thought to myself, this purifies bad karma, and felt as much delight as a beggar finding treasure. I think of this as one of my good deeds. Now, among the 33 good deeds, this is the number it is. This is the 11th. Now, as I have been describing yesterday and the other day, if we think about how MIKYÖ DORJE strived at the roots of virtue in order to benefit all sentient beings. There are people who think that people who are going to make sentient beings with uncouth minds would make obstacles to that and benefit. And so these are, and so they would they would try to make obstacles for the acts of generosity. They try to make us intentions and actions of giving impure. And so they would say that generosity and discipline such as this will never become the path to great enlightenment. This is the Mahayana path. So basically what they do is try to do all they could in various different ways to make obstacles. Sometimes they would seem to be trying to help you and say, so they say, oh, this isn't trying to help, and this is actually harming other beings. You shouldn't do that. So if you look at it from the outside, it seems like they're trying to be nice to you and they're being compassionate for you. And so there are people who give advice and counsel like this. When we talk about Maras here, actually, we think about people who have horns cut out of their heads, and who are, but that's not necessarily what they mean. The people who prevent us from practicing the Dharma, or the beings, whether they're humans, whether they're spirits, or whatever they might be, are all different classes of Maras. And what we need to do for them is we need to really absolutely must focus our minds. And we think, okay, well, they're pretending to be nice to me, and they're pretending to treat me well, and they're giving me this advice. They're teaching the wrong path. They're not teaching the right path. It's important that we develop such certainty in this, and likewise, but we must not think that this other person is trying to fool us and therefore get angry or have a grudge against them. And the reason for this is that because they're they've accumulated bad karma from beginningless time, from beginningless samsara. The results of this is that they have to create obstacles for us when we want to achieve this. And so another thing we should think out, if everything turns out the way they're making the plans, if everything goes the way they want it to, then it's going to harm for us, but it's also going to bring them a terrible karmic ripening in the future. It won't bring them a good karmic ripening in the future. And so no matter what that, note of that, I won't be affected by their obstacles. And instead, I should see if I can develop even stronger antidotes than I had before and be really diligent in this. And so this will also benefit the other. This will also benefit oneself. So when you think about obstacles, when obstacles appear, we say, oh, I'm having a lot of obstacles, so it's not going to work out. I mean, we can't give up like that. The more obstacles there are, and then you need to, if you make your antidotes even stronger than that, that's beneficial for you. It's also in the future, it'll be even more beneficial to the other person so that they do not achieve, or that they don't have any bad karmic ripening of that from the future. So that's another virtue of this. So basically what we say is we need to be victorious over the Maras. And so we need to have a real confidence to do this. And so how is it that we can overcome the Maras? Well, the best method is that while you're on that path of practicing the Dharma, no matter what internal or external conditions occur, you must not let them affect you. And no matter who there is, no matter what counsel and advice, or whether they're doing it peacefully or violently, whatever method they're using, even if they want to make obstacles, you must think that you must not be affected by that. Make sure that you are unchangeable. You must have that courage and confidence that you can't be changeable. You must be like the depths of the great ocean that's unmoving. And if you have this really stable mind, if you have that, then you will be able to be victorious in the battle over the Maras. Otherwise, if you don't have that stable mind and that stable thought of the Dharma, then when some small obstacles happen, there's a danger that your mind will change. And so in particular, in this day and age, and so even though many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have forsaken their own needs and come for the sake of others, these Bodhisattvas and Buddhas have come. There are many who have come, but you could say it's because of the faults of the students, or you could say in brief, because of sentient beings have too strong afflictions, and because of the bad karma and the power of their karma is too strong, it's very difficult for the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas' activities to work out the way they want. There may be a few great beings who have vast activity, but because the results of their students' karma are so powerful, that even at the beginning they have the vast activity, but in the end, that activity might turn into, can change in the end, it might become corrupted in the end. And for someone like MIKYÖ Dorje, then, from the very beginning, his students from the very beginning were very unruly and uncouth, and they had the results of their karma, the bad karma were very, very powerful. And this is the time that he appeared in. And so no more unruly, badly behaved his students were than he had the blessings of being able to engage with even more, with the same amount of compassion and activity. This is like a particular power or blessing of his. So MIKYÖ Dorje himself, for his students and for his attendants and people, there are a lot of people around. There are good people and there are bad people. And among them, there are probably more bad people. And so for all of them, either in terms of material things, by the generosity of material things. He gave extremely generous in material things. And for some people, when they are encountering a threat to their life, or when they're experiencing great loss and wealth, and for those people in great danger, he was able to protect them and give them the generosity of protection from danger. And so he benefited students through both material and dharma generosity, and was very kind to them. But there are many people, because they had very strong imprints from many lifetimes of having grudges against him for that reason. All of the things that had been offered to the Lama and to the gurus, but the guru and the jewels, and they had no thought at all that these were offerings made out of faith, offerings to the jewels. And instead, they had no thought of it. They thought of this. And so they would engage in thievery, robbery, and banditry and steal things from MIKYÖ DORJE, even though he was a great bodhisattva. So how they did this thievery, robbery, and banditry is that MIKYÖ DORJE himself, before he was identified as a tulku, before MIKYÖ DORJE was identified, because even before there was there were the two different camps, and between them, the two different candidates, and there was a dispute between the two. But at that time, the Karma Gachin, the great people from the Karma Gachin, most of the workers from the great encampment were supporters of the candidate who was not the actual reincarnation of the Karmapa, but they didn't support MIKYÖ DORJE. And in the end, MIKYÖ DORJE managed to be victorious, and he was enthroned as the Karmapa. And once he was enthroned, from that time, and that's during the time of the Ming Dynasty and the Ming Dynasty, and the Karmapa had a very good connection. And so the Ming Emperor sent many amazing jewels and things to offer to MIKYÖ DORJE. And there were also, at that time, the great encampment was a very majestic. It was the time when the Karmakaji was flourishing, and at that time, people would make many huge, incredible offerings. And when they offered them, now MIKYÖ DORJE at that time didn't have any attachment at all. He had no attachment to them all, and as students, he would give as many of them to his students and the people around him. For an example, like this is something that we can't really get our minds around. For instance, there's one person. There was an ordinary attendant, an ordinary student. He gave this student, 1,000 bricks of tea. And like in Tibet, you have these bricks of tea that are wrapped up in bamboo. So they're that size, right? And he gave everyone 1,000. He would give them like a 4 or 5 mule loads of gold and silver, or bolts of silk, or pack animals like horses and cattle. And he gave an incredible amount to everyone. And once he gave this to each individual person at that time, MIKYÖ DORJE, an ordinary person, his retinue, would receive wealth that would be fit for appropriate for a great Tibetan lord at that time. And so he really cared for them really generally. But MIKYÖ DORJE himself never said, "Oh, I gave you a really big gift." It's impossible that he would have said that. He never said it. However, but the recipients of his generosity, the people to whom he gave, had no gratitude for MIKYÖ DORJE. And so they felt it's more like they're getting a loan. It's like MIKYÖ DORJE. It's like the MIKYÖ DORJE had a debt to them. And so they're thinking, now what more can I get? They say, what can I do? Can I get more? Can I get something else? And it's like there's an insatiable, unsatisfiable. No matter more that no matter how much they got, they always wanted more and better. And not only did they ask for more and better, they'd also use whatever things in order they'd use various different methods to cause harm to him. And the worst thing is that then say, oh, you've had all this activity and so forth, but you had difficulties before, right? There were complications. There was that dispute about whether your computer, about you were the KARMAPA, right? And so the reason why you're now the KARMAPA and so many students is because of us. It's our kindness. It's nothing that you did. You don't know how to do anything. If you want to think about who's kindest, it's us who's kindest. And if without us, who knows whether you could make things work out. So there are many people who said that, and some other people would make threats. Now, you better treat me well. If you don't, then you're going to regret it. And there are people who spoke to him like that. And other people said, I'm going to destroy the monks. They say, this is what we said in the old days. All of the monks would give the, and there would be at that time, so everyone in a particular region would give a little bit of a tax in order to support the monks from their community. And so this is what this called so they would say, we're no longer going to let them send any of these taxes or any of these offerings to the monks. And so there are people who said this. So they had no gratitude at all. And if you think about it, it's the sort of thing you should get angry at. But MIKYÖ DORJE himself, the way he saw it, as for people to treat me like this now, that's because in the past, is that I have wasted the provisions or the bodhisattvas of the past have gathered for the sake of the teachings and the beings, and this karma is ripening. And so for that reason, this is why all these other people are now using up all of my things and taking all of my things. It's a result of my own bad karma, he said. And so, and even if I chased after them to find out where all those things have gone, there's no point in doing it, because the great encampment was not only in central Tibet, but in all of Tibet. It was like really a very influential and very powerful and well-respected organization all throughout Tibet. And the KARMAPA himself, in both worldly and dharma terms, was very powerful. And if you were to forcefully try to say, look, where all these things where all the things of the Kame Garshan have gone, he could have done it because he had the power, but he said, no point in do this. If I look for all the things, then they're not going to better. And if I just remain indifferent about it, then it's more beneficial. And so he never had this thought of saying, oh, I gave you this stuff and I benefited in this way, right? He never spoke like that. He never spoke in such a way. And not only did he never speak in such a way, with those people who had helped, who then harmed him in return, he thought if he helped them again, he saw that would be, more meaningful and more beneficial. So at that time, if there's going to a place where they'd made some offerings, if there was a monastery, if there are people who, and so that he would give, there are many people who took everything they could. They stole all the offerings. They took everything they could, and he didn't do anything about that. Instead, he just continued to care for them as lovingly as before. And when he spoke to them in a very nice and relaxed way. And even when he looked at them, he was never, he also looked at them in a nice way. He's never looking at them from the corners of the eyes or looking backwards at them. And he never would go to, in the middle of, when you say, show, I suppose people tend to say, oh, they did this, they did that, then they'd get really embarrassed, right? But he never did anything like that. So in brief, all of the bad karma that it is because their beings are not tamed and because they have no control of the mind. It's because he thought in this way, so he put the blame on the afflictions, but he never saw the fault in the person as being in the person. Likewise, when he saw that the people had harmed him and taken things from them, it was, from one perspective, is a good way to purify his bad karma from being less time, and also a good way. It's like they're giving him instructions on how things and material things are not important, have no essence. So it's like they're actually, in this way, he saw that they were just no different from a Buddha. He thought these are the actual spiritual friend, the actual teacher. And the way he thought of it, so not only did he say this, he also what he said himself. So now these days, there are all the things that we have gained that everybody we've been given, other people have taken them. And because this is purifying the debts that we've had from beginningless samsaras, we have to accept it. And in addition to that, instead of we include the karma of greed and hatred, then we and all of the sentient beings are going to be reborn in the hells. If we don't accumulate the karma of greed and hatred, then we take it as an aid on the path to great enlightenment. Then there's no better method, no more pure method for swiftly awakening to Buddhahood. That's what he said. Now, another thing that we need to understand is that the Buddha made rules that the monastics have to live off of alms, and so all sentient beings should see themselves as like beggars and who have to actually hold out their hands to other people. However, but the difference between a beggar and monastics is that monastics are those who have faith make offerings to. And so whether the food or clothing or things that people give monks and nuns, what they're called in general is what we call, there is a particular term, it's called the food of faith, or we also talk about it as the food of belief or the food of faith. It's basically the food that comes from people who have faith in you. And so this food of faith are things that the people have worked hard for. And so then because they have faith and belief in the monastics, and so then the monastics who receive them then also need to consider that the things that they have received are very important. And the reason why they need to consider them, and the fact that they need to consider them important is really very important. Now, in there's a story from in the Vinaya scriptures that talks about 5 different ways of using offerings from the faithful. And these 5 ways, the first one is using them like an owner, using them by accepting what is given. That's the second. The third is using in the allowed manner. The fourth is using them like a red-hot iron. And the fifth is using them like a loan. So for the first of these 3, what they are is, and the first is using the offerings like an owner. This is for the non-learner arhats. when we talk about noble individuals, they're learner and non-learners. So the non-learner arhats, when they're using the things that are given to them by people, are like using, they can use them like an owner, as if they're using their own things. Because if you use your own thing yourself, then there's no regret to that, right? And then there are also the nobles who have entered the path, the learners. And so the way they use it is by accepting what is given. Accepting what is given is, for example, so the owner then has given you the permission so you may use it. You're allowed to use it. The owner said. It's the same as saying that you may use it. And so that is the way that that they use it. Then even if you're an ordinary individual, not a noble being, but an individual who has discipline, that is someone who practices meditation and practice reciting the text and so forth. Oh, excuse me, what I said about. Excuse me, when we talk about the accepting what is given, this is an incorrect translation. Accepting what is designated for you, not what is given, what is designated for you. So ordinary individuals are allowed to use things the way that are used in the allowed manner. And so you don't have, when it's not your own, but people are saying you may use it. They're giving the permission that you may use it. So that's the way to say it. And so that way you need to use or consume the things that you're given. And so there's a story about this, and this story I think it's important for you to know this story. So one time, there was the Buddha's most important donor was Anathapindata. So Anathapindata was extremely important, extremely rich, and he was like the most important donor at the time of the Buddha. And the place he lived was in Shravasti. And so one time he invited the Buddha and his entire retinue to come. And he had a lot of fabric to make robes from, silks and fabrics. And so I thought, I need to give these to the Buddha and the bhikshus. And when he wanted to do this, and so he went to the Chitta groves, and he prepared to invite the Buddha there. And he made a place for the Buddha sit, and he invited all of his relatives and many of his friends. And he also invited the Buddha, and he also made a really sumptuous meal for the Buddha and his retinue. And then he invited the Buddha and his retinue. When they invited them then, now at that time, and the Anathapindata asked a question of the Buddha, and what he asked was that in this world, what is the best recipient or the best person, or recipient of an offering? And then what the Buddha said, and the Buddha said that the best recipient of an offering is the Sangha. But at that time, so when he was introducing what is the Buddhism, and he said, at that time, so when he was talking about the different types of individuals, the 18 type of learner and non-learner individuals, and these are all solely learner individuals. So this one we're talking about the people who have eliminated the afflictions to a certain point or entirely. So this is the beings that he primarily spoke about. He only spoke about these things. He said, when you give it to the noble individuals, if you're generous to them, if you give offering to them, then these are the best field or the best recipients of offerings. And if you make offerings, then that offering will have a great result. And when he heard this, then Nathapindata immediately got very excited about this. So now he knows who he really should give to. And so when he got so inspired by this, and he immediately he started to make offerings to the Sangha. He took all of the silks and robes fabric that he got with him. And what he said to the bhikshus was, you are the best recipients. You are worthy of joining my palms. You're worthy of bowing. You are the greatest, the unexcelled field for merit. So you are the greatest recipients of offerings, and so for that reason, I'm going to give you these fabric and things, or whatever it was. I don't know if it was silk, but whatever it was, the fabric he gave, and he was giving the fabric. And when he said this, then there was an event that occurred, or a problem that happened at that time. Then this, not everyone in that retinue had been able to eliminate all the afflictions. There are some who had become arhats, but there are some who had eliminated a fair degree of the afflictions. There are some people who had eliminated partially, and some still were ordinary individuals, and so on. And so we have some qualities, yeah. We do have some qualities, but the Buddha always gives us the advice is that we always need to practice virtue, and we always need to give up. We need to hide our qualities, and we need to let people know about our qualities. So you should never hide your faults. You should always show your faults, but you should always hide your qualities. So you're always giving this, and so for that reason, so if I take something today, then it's okay. Because if I take it, then I'm saying that I'm like someone who has qualities. I'm someone who's worthy of receiving offerings. And so I can't take that. No way I can take that. So the arhats didn't take anything. They wouldn't take the offerings. They're supposed to take it with their hands, but they wouldn't take it. They didn't say anything. They wouldn't say whether they'd take it or not. And then he went to some people who had abandoned most of the fair degree of the afflictions. Those are some people, so many people of us have, and when he got them, they said, well, we still have a lot of afflictions left. So we might say, you said these are the recipients of the Dharma, you're really like that, but we're not. So we can't take them. And they didn't accept the offerings. And then who was left? It was the ordinary individuals, people who hadn't given up any of the afflictions. And these people said, "Oh, you made an offerings." They said, "We can't. We haven't begun to suppress the afflictions. We haven't achieved any limits. If we take, how can we take these offerings?" And they didn't accept the offerings. In the end, there was not even a single bhikshu who accepted his offerings. And when they didn't accept his offerings, then Anathapindada got really upset about it. He was very sad. He's saying the bhikshus, like, they've turned their alms bowl over me. So turning over the alms bowl says that they're not accepting they've decided that they're not going to accept my generosity. When I make an offering, they don't accept it. So I have no merit. And so he's thinking in this way. And I think that he lost his complexion, lost all of his color, and he became like blanched and white, and it became so. And the Buddha was there, and the Buddha was there at the time, and the Buddha said to Ananda, "What's going on? Ananda Pindada is making the offering. Why aren't the bhikshus accepting it?" Now, of course, the Buddha knew, but while he was asking, he still asked, because if in the human situation, if he just didn't say anything else, he would not. So in order for the people have to know. So if in order for people to know, he had to ask the questions. So he asked Ananda, but so this time Ananda explained the whole situation, because the Ananda said that Ananda Pandita has asked you, right? So the Ananda Pandita asked you, what is the best reception for offerings? And you explained it. So the learner and non-learner sangha, these are the noble individuals. But if you're a noble individual, then as we said, when you give them the offerings, the neighbors aren't going to take it, because if they accept it, then they say it's like, I'm really something. I'm a noble individual. It's like they're getting, it's going to boasting of their qualities or praising themselves. And other people, because the people And those who hadn't, and those who were noble individuals who hadn't completely abandoned the tradition thought they still had some they could take, and the ordinary individuals didn't feel like they could accept either. When Ananda said this to the Buddha, and the Buddha said immediately, Ananda, now you go and summon all of the bhikshus in Shravasti and get them here. I've got somebody that me. And he gathered all of the members of Sangha, and the whole Sangha gathered there. They gathered around the Buddha, and then the Buddha, first he asked the question. He said, today, well, it was today, I don't know if it was the day or the next day, I don't know. Anyways, Inandana, Natapindata offered you fabric to make robes, right? Whether you've made from the sea, whether you have no, whether they were finished robes or the fabric, he offered it to you. So why didn't you take it? And when he asked that, then people said the Sangha members wouldn't say anything. They couldn't say. They wouldn't say. And then Ananda was like the translator. He was like, then Ananda said, well, to the Buddha, and he explained the situation, the whole story about that situation. And then the Buddha asked the questions. And this is a really important question. What he asked is, so why is it that you went forth as monastics with me? And did you do it to achieve liberation or did you to achieve nirvana? So what this shows is that the reason why you go forth and become a monk of mine for liberation and nirvana, or is it for food and clothing? Because if there are people who became monastics in order to become monastics in order to get food and offerings. So the Buddha was asking them, did you become monks and nuns in order to to achieve liberation, to achieve nirvana? And what they said is that, of course, yes, that is. And when he said that, then the Buddha said, it's okay. If that is how it is, then no matter how valuable the robes, no matter what the price of the fabric, even if it's okay for you to wear expensive fabric. If the food is, really delicious, has 100 flavors or 1,000 flavors, and it's okay to. If someone gives you, even staying in a house, even one that has multiple floors, the main point is that you have not gone forth for the sake of food and clothing. You've gone forth for liberation and nirvana. If you have gone forth for food and clothing, then accepting this is not right. But if you have gone forth for the sake of liberation and nirvana, then if you take it, if you're offered it, you must take it. If you take it, that's a merit for you, and it's also merit for the donor. This is a really crucial point here. To think about the food of faith you have to be someone who has discipline, and just keeping the rules, keeping the precepts is enough. Because you have to look at, are you keeping the discipline in order to get food and clothing, or are you doing it in order to achieve liberation and nirvana? The Buddha himself said, why are you keeping your discipline? He asked that question. So when talking about having discipline, it's keeping discipline. Are you doing it to achieve liberation and nirvana, or are you doing it to gain food and clothing? So in brief, if you have discipline, if you are, then it's okay to eat food of faith. If you are someone who has developed it, if you're someone who has realization, it's okay to have the and if you accept the food and clothing of faith, then it's you're allowed to accept it, and it's going to be able to do that. But even if you're keeping having discipline alone is not enough. You also have to strive at the activities of reading or meditation. That means you have to be reading or reciting. You can't just sit there lazily. If you're if you are striving at the recitation and so forth, and if you accept it without that, then it's like you're getting a result. It's like if you're taking a loan. When you're taking a loan, then at some point you have to get the if someone gives you a loan of $100, the next day you have to give them back $100. And so if you do not strive at the activities of listening and reading, then it's like a loan. But so even if you have discipline, and if you are taking for food and clothing, then it's not okay for you to use the things that people have given with faith, because if you do so, it's like taking a red-hot iron ball that goes down. If you swallow a red-hot iron ball, it's going to burn your entire stomach, right? And so if you are someone without any qualities on, you accept the food of faith, and there's the danger of being reborn in the hells in the future. Now, at this point, I think it's good to remind ourselves of the words of Patrul Rinpoche. And it's because whether we're monastics or whether tantras or whether monastic, whether you're a whether you're a nun or whether you're a monk, all of us, we all live based on the offerings for the living and the fifth. We don't have any other way of leading a living. We have to rely on the offerings for the living and the deceased. And so even if our body is sitting in the puja rows, but if we're not reciting any of the text, then actually when you're reciting the text, you need to actually focus your mind. And you should not speak about anything else. You should only recite. You can't speak, and you should be silent other than reciting and not talk about other things. In the end, if you speak a lot of ordinary idle chattel, speak meaningless things, if you mix the recitation and mantra recitation with ordinary chapter, then there's no point in it at all. And in particular, when we were reciting recitals for the deceased during the name card rituals and so forth, during these times, what the sponsors think is that they have someone that they loved who died. And so now that person who's died is now in the bardo, because that being in that bardo, in order to quell the suffering and fear that being is experiencing, they recite us to the pujas. And so if we're sitting there while we're having any bad thoughts, you must not let yourself have any bad thoughts. Lysol, you must not speak at all about many things, especially things out of attachment or aversion. And the reason for this is that bardo beings have clairvoyance. They're not like ordinary people. Ordinary people, what other people think or know, we don't know. The other person, but the bardo person does know. They have telepathy, and they can know what other people are thinking or what they're saying. And so, for that reason, when the bardo being comes, and see that all the people who have been invited in front of us, they're thinking only bad thoughts, and has no thoughts of benefiting them. They knows that. And then they'll have the wrong views and hatred for that Lama. And if that sentient being develops a wrong view or aversion towards the Lama, then there's a danger that bardo being will end up going to the lower realms. And so in that way, it's better not to invite the Lama to do the service than to invite them. And in particular, when you think about there are many different Vajrayana rituals. There are rituals, there are activity rituals, there are sadhanas, and each of them have many words in this. And so it goes from the beginning, from the Buddha, the Dharma, and so forth, all the way to the very end. The very end, there are the words, are all the words for doing the visualizations of creation and completion. And so because of that, you need to think about if you don't think about the meaning of the visualization of the creation completion phase, and you only recite empty words in like a really loud voice, You're reciting loudly, and has actually no essence. There's no meaning. It's the same as a parrot reciting a manis. Like when you have a parrot, the parrot can know how to say that. If someone lobs it, they can say mani hum, but they don't. They can recite mani mani hum, but do the parrots know what mani peme hum means? It's hard. It's the same. So in particular, when we're reciting that, when we get to the mantra reception, so we just like relax. We get really bored during that because we lie down like a corpse. And there's no way we can sit up straight. We can't even sit up straight. And then with our eyes, we look on one side to the other side. Our ears, the prick when you hear something over there and there. And at the same time, we say many meaningless things. We say, oh, that's this. Oh, what did you see that? It was up on Facebook. Did you see that movie last night? We say all these different things. We say many different things. And when you're talking about this, and what do we do with our mouths? Then we're moving, so it's like we're chasing ghosts and sheets. We're chasing just and we're counting with the mantras, and we're sitting there. And the mala and the thoughts and the words that we're saying, now they're all mixed up. And the reason is that we're turning the Dharma, reducing the Dharma just like a completely flimsy facade. It's like at the beginning, it's just the facade of Dharma, but there's no essence to it. There's not even a facade of the Dharma anymore. It's like the facade of a facade. There's actually no point to it at all. And so it's said an old ancient proverb. It is better to sing a little ditty with good intentions than to recite manis while harboring ill intentions. So if you're going to recite manis with bad intentions, it's better to just sing a nice song with a good thought. So whether we're lamas or whether monks or nuns, whoever we are, when we're at a puja, we always think, oh, how much do we get? How many distributions? I got 100, they got 200. Oh, they got 2,000. And so we're always counting the distributions. And we think, how was the tea today? We're in India. We don't really think about the tea as being, but when you're in tea, you just think about how rich is the tea, and if it's very rich, it's good. If it's not very, it's anything. It's just like tea. It's just like water. They'd say. Likewise, the bread, right? You say the bread is it thin? You say, the bread's no good today. And if you really think about this, there's no point to it. We aren't doing pujas in order to have bread. We aren't doing the pujas in order to think tea. We aren't doing it in order to receive the distribution. We're doing it to see whether we can bring some benefit to another person. And so, whether we're doing it for the living or for the deceased, they've come to a really hard place. They're really facing misfortune. They're in a bad place, and they've put their hopes in us, and they take us as a source of refuge. They join their palms and sitting there. And if we so waste their hopes, then this is not right in terms of karmic cause and effect. We should think to ourselves, they're going to be deeply unhappy and then motivated by loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta. Though we should do as much as we can, as much as we're able, we should do practices of creation conclusion as well as we can. Even if we only know how to recite a mani or only the sutra in 3 sections, we need to do this with the motivation of benefiting that other person. Even if you don't have any qualities of the practice of creation completion at all. And so I don't know anything. I don't know how to do the creation completion. I don't know anything but recite. So nothing's going to happen today. And then we let ourselves get self-discouraged and lazy. We think, I can't do that. And so we instead of increasing our confidence and courage, we're decreasing it. If you have no qualities, at least you can think about the meaning of the words. It's right as you're saying the Buddha. When you're saying Buddha, go for refuge to the Buddha Dharma. It's like, this is what the Buddha is, this is the Dharma. If you don't even know that, there's something we can do, and what that is So I don't know anything. I can't do anything. I don't need anything. But at least the gurus and jewels, please look with compassion. Please take care of these desperate sentient beings. And when we do this, if we supplicate from the bottom of our heart to the gurus and the jewels, and because of the compassion of the three jewels, because of the source of refuge, and because of the infallible power of unfailing cause and result, the limits, benefits of bodhicitta, then whether they are sick or whether they're deceased, then it'll bring benefit to them. If that's nothing else to do, then you can do that at least. And so here I got a story to tell. I think if I tell you a story, I think it may be a little bit clearer to you. And so the story is probably from the time of the 15th Karmapa DORJE. And what the story is there was a monk at Serpa Monastery. Of course, there wasn't just one. There were many monks at Serpa Monastery, but there was one particular one there. And this one, and he really wasn't very bright at all. And he was also extremely lazy. And in any case, what he did at Serpa Monastery, there are many texts you have to memorize. You have there are the Vajravarahi and Chaksamvara, the daily texts and prayers and stuff, and he didn't bother memorizing them. And so what they did at the Serpa Monastery, the custom at that time was to make the uneducated monks into the senior tea servers. So this is a tradition. So he was made into the senior tea server. And when he was made as a senior tea server, then one day he made a mistake. He didn't do his job properly. And because he had done it properly and thought, oh, the discipline master is going to beat me, he thought. Oh, they're going to beat me. This isn't going to be good. I think this, we had a friend. And so he and his friend, they ran away from the monastery. They ran away from Serpa Monastery. And after they fled, they didn't really know exactly where they're going. They didn't really have any plans, but eventually as they're going, through various places, and eventually they got to Ngari. And so when they got to Ngari, or the area of Ngari and Tu, they came to this nomad family. And it happened, they came there at the same time as a family member had died in the family where they visited. Now the family knew that the monks were from Serpa Monastery. And they figured that the Serpa Monastery monks would be very important. And so they brought them inside. Please do poa for the deceased. When they said this, they didn't forget about them knowing about how to do poa. They don't even know what the texts on poa are. For someone who knows them, they don't know any of the texts on poa. So how can they do poa? But at that time in that family, at the same time, they had already invited a few lamas and monks from other lineages. And so these two we don't know, if we say we don't know how to do poa, they'd get embarrassed. It'd be like a disgrace to Serpa Monastery. And so instead, they just screwed up their courage and they went in and they sat down on their seats. And when they sat down on their seats, they got ready to do the poa. So how are we going to do poa? They're thinking, oh, what am I going to do? They looked at each other and it's like, this took a little while here, looking at each other. And the senior tea server, what he thought to himself is like, he could have the 4 sessions guru in his mind. He didn't really know it very well, but he could kind of stumble through it. And so, I can stumble my tail. Maybe if we recite the 4 sessions guru, that's good. He said that to his friend. And his friend, if we don't do anything, it's going to help. And so I'm going to recite the 4 sessions, and you recite me and help me and recite it up. And so I don't really know it very well, so you recite it too. And his buddy said, yeah, okay, yeah, you recite it. I'm going to help, right? Okay. And they sat down, they got ready, and they got ready to do this, and everyone get ready to recite the 4 sessions. And everyone was looking around. There were so many people around them. Everyone was looking at them. They were Serpa Monastery monks, and everyone's looking and saying, "What are they going to do?" Everyone's looking, see what they do. And that's when the first time they started to panic. Everyone was staring at them, and they got even panicked even more before their faces began to burn. And they couldn't even say the words of the 4 sessions. In the end, They had nothing else they could do. And they had their robes, right? They took their robes over the head. They wore them over their faces. They covered their heads with their face and began, and they then they began to recite the 4 sessions. My mother, those sentient beings, and they began to recite the 4 sessions Guru Yoga. When they recited this, when they going through it, and they got to the point where you recite the Karmapa Kenos. As is embodiment of all Buddhas, the Karmapa Cheno. You got to that point where you say Karmapa, they're reciting Karmapa Cheno. They got to that point, and they're saying, Karmapa, if you don't look at me today, then when are you going to do it? You have to look, please see me compassionately. And they recited the Karmapa Keno so loud, and they recited Karmapa Keno really loudly. And the senior tea server heard something. Suddenly he heard in his ear, said, now do it. He heard someone say that. When he heard this, he thought, and the meeting said, he immediately said, hey. He said that. He said, pay. And when he said pay, then this guy said this really loud, it's like a loud crack. And the other person, there's the corpse over there. And when you do this, you had the signs of Po that happened at the crown of the head, right? At that point, he had like a piece of skull as big as a palm popped off the top of his head. And everyone was completely amazed. Like, that's something like, they've got powers, haven't they? No, the Super Mountains, there's no one like this. Look, they have these signs of power. You've got completely threw off the top of the skull. And they felt great faith in them. And the family gave them a lot of offerings. And many people invited, and they went up here, they went to these different places. They were given a lot of butter and meat and tubed or Tibetan cheesecake. And in the end, they got all these, they had a lot of offerings, right? So they got all these good offerings. Then they got a little bit, now we can go back to the monastery. Yeah, no point if we don't. So better for us to just go back to the super monastery. So we've got something to offer everyone. And so we can go by that. And if we go back and make the offerings into them, maybe maybe they'll allow us back into the monastery. And so the buddy said, okay. And they left and they went back. And they gave really nice distribution to the Sangha. They gave great offerings and they made great offerings to everyone. Made the offerings and said, us running away in the bad wasn't good, so now please let us back. And when they sent the monastery, everyone had known what was happening, so you too can they allowed them back in, so they continue to be Serpa monastery monks. So at that time, when they were reciting the carpenter and reciting this, DORJE heard it. This is what they say. They said it might have, they heard it. So Kachap DORJE heard them reciting the Karmapa Chenas. This is what it said. Whether it was Karmapa Kaji or it was another, with the Karmapa Kachap DORJE or another one, I don't know. But anyways, one of the Karmapas. The reason why I'm saying this is that even if you don't have any qualities, if you don't have any abilities, if you pray to the gurus and the 3 jewels, the pure thoughts and pure attention, then there's benefit. So the most important thing is that we need to do whatever we can to see what we can do to help that sentient being. And doing this is really important. Instead, there's some people like kind of are worried about karma cosmos. They think, I'm not going to take the offerings from on behalf of the living of the deceased. I'm not going to, especially those from the deceased. There are people who like this, and I'm not even going to recite any dedications or aspirations, saying I can't take any offerings on behalf of the deceased. They wouldn't take any offerings or recite any dedication or aspirations on them. But that's too extreme. It's actually working at cross purposes to your own benefit. And so it's actually putting yourself in the front. But actually what you're supposed to do, if you know how to think about things, even if you don't have any power, if you don't have any abilities, because of blessings of the lineage, because of the gurus, so you're going to sit there like, so think that if you have that faith in your root and the guru, lineage gurus, if you supplicate them, then it brings benefit. Otherwise, if it's like all unilaterally, I can't take any food of faith or anything, offerings on behalf of the deceased, and won't recite dedications or aspirations, that's too extreme. So that's how it is. So that is enough for today. Now we recite the dedication prayers. So tomorrow is a day off, and the next day is also day off. So you'll have a bit of time to relax. Usually during the when you have the days when the day is off, usually it's the students who are happy, but now it's the teacher. And the day off, a couple of days of a little bit of a break. It's kind of strange. So that's how it is. So tomorrow and the day after are days off. And then the day after that, we will continue again. Thank you very much.
Bye.